Hello everyone, welcome back to... I say welcome back, but we haven't done this yet. Hi, welcome in to College of Lore's RPG review video series. This is the first video of many, many more, whether you like it or not.
We upload daily on this channel, once daily on this channel, once daily on our actual play channel, and
twice daily on
our shorts channel.
Twice daily on our shorts channel. We have so many videos for you all the time. That's 4 videos a day. Do you have any idea how much work that is for our editors? Please give us some views. Anyway,
we need to feed the editors.
We need to feed the editors, and also our cats, who get really mad when we're away all day working with them.
The cats get fed first before the editors.
The cats do get fed first before the editors, so really we should have said that part first. The cats are the priority. They're really mad because we've been recording so much.
I say as if you're not lead editor.
And I don't get fed until the cats get fed, do I? Anyway, today we're gonna talk about everyone's favorite tabletop role-playing game.
Debatably.
Dungeons and Dragons. No, it's everyone's favorite, I decide. If Dungeons and Dragons isn't your favorite tabletop role-playing game, why are you watching a channel full of Dungeons and Dragons content? We only occasionally even do other stuff.
That's what this feature is for, except not today.
Not today, though, because today we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and we're going to be reviewing it. And the Penitent, with College of Lore, and me, Cass, with College of Lore, I'm hosting, Penitent is talking to me. We're going to do this like an interview. I'm going to ask you some questions, you're going to tell me some answers, we're going to talk about different systems that I know nothing about, so this is a genuine interview. I don't know shit.
Except about 5e, which you do know a little bit.
I know a little bit about 5e because I've played before.
You provide the Qs, I provide the As.
Yes.
I have played several tabletop RPGs over the years.
Some that I've never even, a lot that I'd never even heard of until you existed in my presence. Until you spawned in next to me and were like, hey, have you ever heard of Shadowrun? Which we're gonna review in a few videos from now, so stay tuned for that. It was like, I don't know what that is.
So, yeah, basically, I have played a ton of RPGs, I have jammed a bunch of games, I have been a player in them, or I've at least read the document for a lot of them.
And you're gonna tell me and everyone else some stuff that we may or may not know.
Yeah, and I will rank them on a scale of 1 to 100.
10 categories, 10 points.
Yes, unfortunately, the scale does not always reflect how much I like the game.
Yeah.
It is...
I think we should have an honorary out of 100 for how much you like the game. I think we should add that as a second, like, here's the logical, factual out of 100 score, and then here's how much the Penitent likes the game.
Now...
Which is why Fatal is gonna have a negative 100 score.
Now there are, this is obviously subjective to a degree. For example, the category. I think popularity is an example.
Yeah.
I think a game is, at its best, a perfect game is popular enough that you can find a game with little to no difficulty.
Yeah.
The only, 10 out of 10 popularity game ever would be 5e right now.
Yeah.
And I don't mean even, right now, ever. 3.5 wouldn't have qualified as a 10 out of 10, and we might do other editions of D&D.
Yeah.
Coming up here.
Fun is another category that's very subjective, because what someone enjoys might not be the same as what someone else enjoys.
We will probably end up reviewing Warhammer, and I love the lore of Warhammer 40k, I do not like playing the game.
I have heard a lot of stories about how that game is a lot, in a lot of ways, including money, apparently.
Yes.
That game is very expensive.
The cost of entry score for that game is probably a 1.
The cost of entry score for that game is -2. We're getting into the negatives. If it costs you over a certain amount of money, you get negative points.
Yes.
If you have to paint the minis yourself and there's no other way to do it, it costs you negative points. Don't you have to do that with Warhammer? I guess you don't have to paint.
You can theoretically go with unpainted minis, but you'll be laughed at.
Yeah, okay, so that's a cost of entry. Cost of entry, your fucking dignity if you play with unpainted minis. We'll talk about that in another video.
Imagine a Warhammer player having dignity.
I had a friend who played Warhammer once and she was fine.
No, I kid. I follow people who play Warhammer.
Could not be me, though. I don't have any money. I have some money. Not enough for Warhammer.
I follow people who play Warhammer. I follow them around.
I'm gonna put a pickpocket.
I break into their house and steal their minis.
They're worth a lot. Anyway, let's talk
about 5e.
Let's talk about D&D 5e, 5th edition, Dungeons & Dragons. There's at least 5 dungeons and or dragons here, or there have been at least 5 of them up till
D&D.
D&D 5e, 5 dungeons, 5 dragons, maybe more. Let's get into it. What is D&D 5e?
So, D&D 5e is the latest edition of one of the longest running tabletop RPG games, basically ever.
Role-playing games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fantasy setting, although it does have some unearthed arcana, some additional stuff.
There's technomancy in some of them.
Yeah, that bumps it up to modern technology, technomancy. It can really easily be scaled to the things, but the book, as you look at the book right at the box, it is a fantasy setting, Tolkien-esque.
With some extra guides in.
Yeah.
Because there's, what, 43 races playable now? Watch our video that ranks all of the D&D races when it comes out. From whatever the last one is to number 1.
Watch all our videos. Send us chips.
Send us chips. You won't understand that yet, maybe. I don't know when that video is going out.
Potato chips.
Yeah, we're gonna take some chip bags and make a collage.
We're gonna make this thing and we're gonna actually get sent a bunch of chips, and I don't like that.
I'm gonna do something with them, don't worry. I'm still figuring it out, but I will figure it out. Anyway, so what you're telling me is D&D is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game?
Yes.
That's crazy. Who thought that was a good idea?
It is the latest, but notably not the 5th.
No, not really.
Yes.
Wow, that's crazy. Anyway, who thought that was a good idea?
Oh.
Who made that?
Oh, you're asking me a question.
Yes, I'm asking you a question.
Alright,
I like that you couldn't tell. No, yeah, who thought that was a good idea? That was my segue, and you missed it.
It is designed by Wizards of the Coast.
Whoa. We considered naming our channel Wizards Off the Coast, but we were like, that might be a little too close for copyright.
Yeah, it was
a little too close for copyright.
It was one of the things floated in the meeting, but we were a little concerned.
Yeah, I like College of Lore. I think College of Lore is a good name. I think we'll stick with that one. Unless we get copyright striked by someone else for something else. Don't do that, please. We're having fun.
Yes. So produced by Wizards of the Coast. Originally designed not 5e, but the game by Gary Gygax.
Who is now dead, and Wikipedia on the 5th edition Wikipedia page does not seem to reflect that very well last I checked.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get a Wikipedia editing license and, like, go crazy on that. Because I was looking it up, and I was like, hey, the Penitent, isn't this guy dead? And she was like, yeah, he is. And I was like, that's crazy. Why does it say he made this game?
But yeah, Wizards of the Coast. Yeah, they made it.
That's who made it. That's who's still making it. They're making another one. Sort of.
Sort of.
They're adapting things. Anyway.
60 will come out eventually.
Maybe.
60 is like the GTA 6. It'll come out when 5e stops being profitable.
Yeah. So the next question I have for you is, how many friends do you have to have with this? Just kidding. Is this a cooperative game? And if so, how cooperative is it? We're doing this like an interview.
Well, so it can be.
It can be. I've never played this game. How do you... do you have to have friends for this? At least one, I guess.
Yeah,
Unless you really want to go crazy with it.
So, the thing about it is, it can be played with a group of really as many as you want.
Or as few as you
I wouldn't recommend, like, over 8.
The first time I ever played D&D, it was at a club in my high school, and I think we ended up having to break it into 2 groups because there were like 30 people there.
Yikes.
And the guy who was going to run it was like, well, this is entirely too many of you.
Yeah, that sounds like a bit too many.
Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot of guys.
So
that was my first ever D&D game.
It doesn't require like a ton of players. You can do it with 1 player and a GM,
which we're doing. Except I'm playing a lot of characters and you're playing a lot of characters.
Yes.
And they're all good buds.
You can do it yourself, although you kind of need a lot of experience.
Why would you?
Well, because you're lonely.
Well, I am not lonely, so I wouldn't know. If you guys are out there lonely, listen to her advice. You can play this by yourself.
It's also worth noticing that you don't have to necessarily cooperate with each other.
Yeah.
You can and you should, but there are versus variants of D&D I've heard of, which are fun.
That sounds fun. We've played games before where you have like a hero party and like an antagonist party.
Yeah, and it's a good time.
Which is also fun. It doesn't have to all be cooperative. Anyway, that's pretty cool. You taught me this word the other day. You taught me this term that in the TTRPG community...
Why was I scared it was going to be a slur?
You taught me this term the other day, and for the TTRPG community. Apparently, if something is very rules-heavy, people call it crunchy. Crunchy is D&D 5e.
Well, it's not Warhammer.
How many bags of chips, approximately, would I need to put in my mouth to attain the same crunchiness level of the D&D 5e rulebook?
I believe crunchy refers to the dice.
Oh, how many dice do I need to put in my mouth? I liked my idea better. Send us chips.
So yeah, it is not Warhammer.
It is not Warhammer.
It's pleasant. It's also not like... There are some systems where all you need is 1d6 and a page of rules. It's not that either.
Okay. Somewhere in the middle.
It's I could teach someone how to play D&D in an afternoon.
Okay. Could you teach a 5-year-old how to play D&D in an afternoon?
No.
Okay. That's kind of the metric we're going on. From teaching a 5-year-old in an afternoon to this would take me a year to read through.
There are some games, Fiasco is one that I think is really easy to teach people. It's not expressly over the top easy, but it's not difficult. You can walk someone through it without them getting too horribly confused. It is one of the more streamlined D&D editions, I think probably the most.
It's also relatively easy to cut some stuff out of if you just want to like do it really casually.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So another question that I have for you, and I'm everyone imagine me holding up like a stage microphone, you know how people walk up to people on the street and they hold up like the like newscast microphone and they're like, here, tell me your opinions on this thing entirely like unsolicited, apropos of nothing. And people will just do it for some reason because they like talking to cameras. That's what I'm doing with you right now. What's the grimdark rating on this one?
Well, that kind of depends on your DM. It doesn't... It has a baked-in setting, but it's really easy to change that. Faerun, as it goes, is slightly on the lighter side of things, without being no stakes, and without being, like, aggressively goofy.
Yeah.
It's big heroes usually conquering their villains, but there is loss in that and there is death in that, and the big thing about it is there's a game like 10 Candles that can only be grimdark.
Yeah.
And there are some games like there's a game out there meant to emulate like Studio Ghibli movies.
That sounds cute. I want to play that.
We will review that at some point.
Yay.
That is pretty expressly lighthearted.
Cool.
Okay. And it's not either of those extremes. It's kind of where the DM wants it. You could do a game where you are all like these horrible, haggard people who are just fighting to survive in an apocalyptic scenario. Or you could play where you are children in a like young high school setting, like Magic high school setting, where you're just learning how to adventure. And...
Hey, Strixhaven does that.
Yeah. Strixhaven's a college, but yeah.
Okay, it's the same thing to me. There was a one-shot that a friend of mine a long time ago talked about that was a group of, it was meant to be played by a group of players all playing little, like, children from, like, an orphanage. I think it was all tieflings, who got taken to a candy store on a field trip, and the whole point of this one-shot was basically to see how much candy they could steal with their little grubby thaumaturgy-knowing hands. And get their hands all over this candy store and take as much of it as they possibly could home. And that is something D&D can do. And then you can do the worst stuff ever. Our Cursive Strahd game is going to go fairly dark. It's already gotten fairly dark in the point we're recording it. But it's not, like, grimdark.
You know, I was about to say we once played a game where all of the PCs were under 14. And I was about to say that was fairly bright, and then I remembered, no, it wasn't. It was just young children getting traumatized.
Yeah, it'd be like that sometimes. That's life, baby. Yeah, okay. So, fundamentally, I think the most important question before we get into ranking out of 100 is... what's the system here? What's the mechanic? How do you play?
It's a base D20 system.
Yeah.
Which means you roll 20-sided die, and you will typically add modifiers to things. You will need other die. You will need percentile, especially if you're a DM.
Yeah.
Or a cleric.
Or a cleric if you get to level, what is it, 7, 9? 9?
9,
you
I
get
think?
Divine Intervention?
Yeah.
9 or 10, something in there.
You will need D8s, D10s, D12s, D6s, D4s for damage.
For damage. What's your damage?
Rolls
a D6 to tell you.
But most of the rolls you make in the game will be a D10, and if you
D20.
most of the rolls in the game will be a D20.
I didn't know we were changing. 1D&D has made some sweeping changes that I was not yet aware of. Yeah, everything's a D20, except for when you're rolling a few other very specific things.
Now I'm imagining a version of and I apologize for getting sidetracked.
It's okay. Don't apologize to them. They don't get to. You don't have to be sorry for
a
them.
version of D&D where every roll is a D20, like damage, health,
and you just have like really, really big modifiers to it sometimes.
And the big thing for new players to learn is if you're asked for a roll, most of the time they mean a D20.
Yeah. They'll usually tell you otherwise. You usually say roll percentile.
The one exception is if you're asked for a damage roll, in which case you roll your weapon's damage.
Yes. And so it's pretty simple. The vast majority of the time you're just rolling D20s whenever your DM tells you to and adding whatever modifiers are on your sheet.
Or for a good time, 8d6.
Man, I fucking love Fireball. I know what you said doesn't have to be Fireball, but in my heart, 8d6 is the Fireball number.
The spell, not the alcohol.
Yes. 8d6 is the Fireball number in my heart. So now that we've talked about kind of the gist of that, let's talk about numbers. The bane of my existence and my mortal arch nemesis. You have those sometimes in D&D. Anyway.
Math.
So, first category is the concept, which, from what I understand, is just the, idea of the game. The basic, what is this and how does it work?
Yeah, so in my mind, a perfect concept, and I'm going to go over what I think the perfect 10 out of 10 is for all of these. A perfect concept for a role-playing game is something that has never been done before.
Or at least not quite in the same way.
Yeah. Innovates in some way. Is not so obscure that it's hard to sell people on. For example, any fandom game is going to get docked on concept.
Yeah.
Just because you need to know the source to buy in, like Star Wars RPG or Pokemon.
Yeah.
RPG. Which are great games in their own right, but again, originality is going to matter if you were the first to do something.
Even if it's not new anymore, yeah.
But, I think originality is the big one, along with innovation, and, yeah.
Yeah. So, on a scale of 1 to a number that's several numbers above 1, which may or may not be 1 with a 0 tacked on at the end of it, what would you rate the concept for D&D?
So, I rated it an 8.
Okay. It's been done before, because there's, 6 other versions of it before this.
Yeah, so I'm not docking it off the base concept alone. It's fantasy, which is a hugely oversaturated market right now.
When it started. Okay.
But it wasn't when it started. So it gets bonus points for being one of the originals. Kind of one of the originators of the genre. It is not the first fantasy RPG, I don't believe. I think there are a few that predate it, but none that got nearly as popular. On its level, it's Lord of the Rings. At the time, it was Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. It's kind of the gold standard.
Yeah, it's not 100% original or innovative because it is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
The concept itself is strong. I like it a lot. Fantasy RPG adventure with a little group, kind of like the Fellowship, it's hard to go wrong with.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly reinventing the wheel. And it's far from, excuse me, is that? like last 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So, but it's not exactly reinventing the wheel. And it has some ideas that are fairly obviously, like, derivative of other fantasy hits, if not other fantasy RPGs, though that may change depending on who you ask, because I believe there are some people who accuse D&D of stealing from them, which is not confirmed.
Okay. So that's fair. I am not going to challenge you on your rating. I think this is kind of the gold standard of RPGs, tabletop RPGs.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It's good to have something to kind of compare everything else to, which is why we're doing this one first.
Yeah.
And I like that it's, I, to a degree, like when something isn't totally original, when it pulls in common threads of things people have liked. I think the 8 is fair, though.
I went back and forth between 8 and 9 on this several times.
Yeah, I think 8 or 9 would be a totally fair score, either way you had decided. So the next category is cost of entry. We talked about how godforsaken expensive Warhammer is. Where's this in comparison to that?
To get a 10, your game is free.
Yeah.
That's just straight up how... The only way you get a 10 is if the game is free.
Yeah. Which D&D's not.
Ignoring cost of dice, which is a dumb thing to bring up, because you can get dice anywhere.
Yeah.
If you want to play this game, bare minimum for a group...
With, legitimacy.
Is $100.
Yeah. Preferably more like 150 because you also probably want the Monster Manual.
For the Monster Manual, and if you only bought the DM's Guide and the Player's Handbook, you are left with somewhat limited options on races and classes, and especially subclasses.
Yeah. There's a lot of other stuff out there that you should get.
Yeah. And subraces, I believe the elves in the book have 3 subraces.
Yeah. There's like a whole
and they're like 11 now?
Yeah. It's like High Elf, Wood Elf. I don't even remember what the other one is.
Drow.
Oh, is Drow in the book?
Mm-hmm.
In the original?
Yep, Player's Handbook. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was in like the something else. I don't know. I didn't know that. Cool. Awesome. Things I've learned. I owned the Player's Handbook and I didn't know that.
Yep, Drow's in there.
Cool. Good. Yay.
I actually looked at that page so much that I remember the heading somewhere on the Drow page is The Darkness of Drow.
Oh, that's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but also, like, no.
Why is it so dark in here?
Why is it so dark in here?
But no.
Who turned the lights out in the Underdark?
Yeah, 7 out of 10. Largely just because those books, $100 base minimum, you'd love to splurge for the Monster Manual.
Yeah. Which
is another $50. And I know you can get them secondhand for slightly cheaper, but again, good luck finding them secondhand.
Yeah.
And also, this isn't about secondhand. This isn't about aftermarket.
Yeah.
This is MSRP, $50.
Yeah.
And every other thing you want to get, be it a pre-written module, be it an expansion with more
stuff.
Sorry, the mic is going to pick that up. The Dale thing.
Oh, sorry.
So, yeah, be it a expansion of the lore with more class options, more race options, more rule variants, a pre-made module, just more lore even in general. All of that is going to be another $50 for each book, and there are tons of them.
Yeah.
There's, I think, close to 40 or 50 different books you can buy at the current moment.
It's too many. We don't need that many.
And yeah, it's not ludicrous because the starting cost, the cost you need to play this game is not that over the top. You can feasibly get away with 2 books, but that's still $100 sets you back.
Yeah.
And if you really want to get all the stuff, collect everything, it's hugely expensive.
Yes.
You need to shell out $50 every 2 or 3 months, basically.
Yeah. So that said, it costs a reasonable amount to start playing this game. How easy is it to actually do it when you're there?
Well, so as a player, it's really easy to learn. I have multiple times taught people that did not know how to play any version of D&D how to make a character in an afternoon. How to make a character in enough time to have time to play still in the day.
Mm-hmm.
There is some more difficulty to learn. There's a learning curve for some things. It's not as easy as a game with like a base D6 system, and it's not as easy as a game without magic.
Mm-hmm.
but I could teach someone how to play a fighter or a barbarian really quickly. Human fighter. I could probably teach someone to make a human fighter in half an hour.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to look into more complicated races and classes, it gets a bit more in the weeds. And my experience, I find a lot of the time, is that new players want to try spellcasters immediately.
I did, and it was a little hard for me to sort out. My first character was a tiefling sorcerer.
Yeah, and that can be a little confusing immediately how it works.
I was immediately biased toward both tieflings and sorcerers after that, because I liked them so much.
Especially with the what is a prepared spell,
What's ritual casting, what's concentration?
Yeah.
How many components does it need? Yeah.
Spellcasting has so many other rules, which is why I've given it an 8 out of 10 for player ease.
Okay. But you can do a lot of other stuff without too much of that still.
Yeah. You can functionally learn how to play a more basic class, even something like Rogue.
Yeah.
Really well. It's just when you get in the weeds of the minute details of character creation, like the gear you get off the start, and the additional rules of spellcasting. That's when it gets more complicated and a bit more. You need to kind of feel it out more. It's actually one of the few things I'd recommend watching a actual play for, to see how people use their spells.
Watch our actual play. It's on our other channel. Link in the description. Yeah. We use spells there. Very exciting. We're not all marshals.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Player ease is one thing, GM ease is another. What's the deal there?
About the same. I also gave it an 8 out of 10.
Okay. It's all kind of the same stuff.
Yeah, a perfect game. I realized I didn't say it earlier. A perfect game for player ease would be a game that you can teach someone in less than an hour.
Yeah.
All the in and outs of.
Mm-hmm.
And GM ease is a game that you can learn, and the book is not so heavy that you can read it all in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And you can internalize it all. There's nothing too confusing.
Mm-hmm.
There are some games that take years to learn, and you still don't know all of them. There are a lot of minute rules in D&D. Some corner cases. Fall damage is famously one. Speed at climbing, flying, swimming is another one.
Yeah.
The base rules, though, are really easy to nail down. When to call for a check, how to set a custom DC, how to run a combat. All of those things are really easy to nail down. All the little base mechanics, how to kind of set a scene and build a world. So there's some minute details that can get a little bit more in the weeds if you go a bit farther with them.
And especially if you want to make stuff that's more complicated than what the book provides you. There are some things that, like... And this is absolutely nothing necessary for a game, but there are things that, like, if you're not satisfied with, like, a monster stat block, how to tweak that and how to balance that is something that takes a learning curve. Adjusting things in D&D is either really easy or really hard as a GM. And it just depends on the thing you're adjusting.
It is also expressly by the book encouraged to adjust the rules to your settings.
Yes, which is also nice.
Which a lot of Crunchier manuals aren't.
Yeah. D&D is very flexible, which is nice. And hey, speaking of flexibility, you said the rating on this one, right?
Yeah.
You said 8 for both? Okay, speaking of flexibility, that is the next category, so what is that one?
Speaking of 8s, it's also an 8.
No way.
So,
no way. 8.
Baked in, it is a fantasy setting.
Yeah.
But again, it can go grimdark, it can go light, it can fit really anywhere on the spectrum based on GM player. It has enough base mechanics in it that you could really easily adjust it up to a modern setting, to a sci-fi setting. You okay?
Yeah, sorry, I heard a weird clicking. I think it was the chair.
There are things that do sci-fi better, like Starfinder. I think that do modern better, things that do cyberpunk better. But it's flexible enough that you can adjust to a style of campaign or even a different setting of campaign. People will tell you that if you want to play a different style of campaign, you should not mod D&D, you should just play a different system. I kind of fundamentally disagree with that.
I think you can do it either way.
Yeah.
But if you understand D&D well, and your players understand D&D well, and no one's really suited to learning something new, it's flexible, it's adaptable.
Yeah. It's not rigid and trapped in its own confines.
Yeah. It's not, you can only play this game in this setting, in this style, or you can't play it at all.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that it shows in the modules, where you have this grimdark thing, you have this very campy 80s style space adventure, you have a fight against giants, you have all these dragon modules.
I mean, there's dungeon crawls, there's like survival horror in whichever one that is.
Run with Frostmaiden, yes.
Yeah. There's the like dark, like kind of gothic horror of Curse of Strahd. There's the very stereotypical like standard adventure starting point, Lost Mines. There's all these different things that you can do with different kind of pre-written stuff that very much give you a feel of how different this game could be.
Speaking of, we have a video where we rank all of the 5e modules.
Yeah, that took forever, so please go watch it. So that said, flexibility. The next one is variety.
Yes. So, this is a 9 out of 10. There are over 40 playable races.
Yeah.
There are 14 playable classes.
Depending on what stuff you use.
It is... Every single class has at least 10, except for Bloodhunter and Artificer.
But those are newer, and one of those is, I don't think, even technically counts. Bloodhunter doesn't technically.
It is D&D Beyond content. Has multiple different subclasses.
Bloodhunter has 4 at a base, and Artificer has like 6 or something right now.
Yes, enough to a degree that you could have a party of all fighters. Like a 6-8 person party of all fighters, and none of you would have to have the same abilities.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
You could even, probably for the most part, pretty much entirely use different weapons and fighting styles. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of fighting styles.
And that's what I like about so much variety. You could all be different races, all be different classes. You could do a game where all of you are elves, but all of you are a different sub-race of elf.
Yeah.
That's how many options there are for that.
Yeah. So there's a ton of options for how you can build who you want to be and what you want to do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of rules for background stuff as well. It's hard to imagine 2 characters really being exactly the same.
Yeah. Unless you build them that way on purpose.
Yes.
And even then, if you're rolling stats, things turn out differently sometimes.
Yeah, 100%.
Are you rolling stats or are you wrong? I'm mostly joking, but not entirely.
The interesting thing is there is a vast wealth of homebrew out there. And there's, because it's so popular, there's so much content for it, it's really easy to grab homebrew. There are hundreds and hundreds of homebrew races, hundreds of homebrew classes. Really, really easy to sink your teeth into really any concept that you want.
Backgrounds, items, all sorts of stuff. Anything you can think of, any, other media you can think of, someone's probably made a class or a race or a weapon or something based off of it. I know there are, plasma weapons based on the Halo stuff on one of the websites.
There is one of the wikis, every single Pokemon has a D&D race.
Insane.
Wow. Yeah.
That's more effort than I could ever imagine. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff.
Flexibility and variety kind of go hand in hand a little bit. And I realized that I had neglected to talk about this previously. A perfect game as far as flexibility would be system agnostic.
Yeah.
Setting agnostic. Where it doesn't matter what setting it's in.
Mm-hmm.
A perfect game as far as variety would have, virtually everything. And D&D is about as close as you can get to that without being a perfect 10.
Yeah.
I think if there were a few more class options, notably a non-magic healer is what I would look to.
That's one we've talked about kind of homebrewing ourselves in the past.
A sniper or gun-oriented class that isn't the subclass.
Yeah. One of the ones that we've also talked about homebrewing ourselves is something kind of a cross between a barbarian and a monk. Something that's more strength-based, unarmed fighting. A bunk.
Yeah, like a brawler type.
Yeah. Some kind of in the pit fighting kind of character.
Yeah.
Style.
Yeah. But
it's like the tavern brawler feat, but just all the time.
Yeah. So it's really, really close to a 10 out of 10 in variety. It's just kind of the class options holding it back, and I accept that there are a bunch of subclasses that let you play basically anything you want.
Yeah.
But it's just, in my mind,
there could be just a little bit more.
There's a degree of separation between this and a 10, so it's a 9 for me.
All right. Popularity. This is the one. This is the game.
Dead straight 10 out of 10.
This is probably one of the only games, if not the only game, that will get that score.
Yes, it is insanely popular. It is the only game that will get that score.
Yeah.
I pulled up a search query on Google for last year.
Yeah.
For how often each game is looked up.
Mm-hmm.
The top 15 most popular RPGs.
Yeah.
So, Shadowrun was number 2,
okay,
with 90,000 queries.
Okay.
I'm not sure if this is in a day, in a month, in
yeah.
a year. I don't think this is yearly.
No.
All the way down that list, Warhammer, 10,000.
Yeah.
So the separation between number 2 and number 15 is 80,000.
Okay.
The separation between number 2 Shadowrun and number 1 D&D is 410,000.
So it's like what?
500,000.
500,000, yeah. That is a huge, huge, huge difference. That is like 5 times the difference.
There are actual play campaigns that get millions and millions of views. There are so many Discord servers and subreddits.
There's a community everywhere for this. Several communities.
Looking for games. It's really easy to find games, especially if you're a DM.
Yeah. DMs are always in high demand.
This is the most popular RPG ever.
Yeah. By leagues.
You know, looking right now, the D&D subreddit has nearly 3 million subscribers.
Yeah.
Critical Role is one of the most popular things out there. Stranger Things is one of those popular things on Netflix right now.
Yeah.
And D&D is just, it's king, popularity-wise. And a perfect game in my mind is the most popular game in its field. And that's what this is.
Yeah. So this is something that we've kind of talked about. We touched on this a little bit with variety, replay value. How many times can you play this game and get something different out of it? And this is, again, kind of the gold standard for that, I feel like.
10 out of 10, infinitely.
Yeah.
There really is no running out of fun here.
As long as you can think up a backstory, you can literally do this infinitely.
A backstory, a plot. We are playing a homebrew setting right now, my own setting, in one of our actual plays.
Yes.
That I came up with wholesale today.
Yeah.
There is a virtually limitless number of concepts for D&D. There is virtually nothing stopping you from playing over and over again something similar to that and getting stale.
And even if you're using a pre-written module, we have played, if you tweak it enough, we have played Curse of Strahd, I have DM'd Curse of Strahd, you have DM'd Curse of Strahd, potentially like 30 times each just for each other and each other's groups.
A couple dozen times for Lost Minds as well.
Yeah. Like, even with something that is pre-written that there is only so many pages and only so much stuff created about it, like Curse of Strahd is what, like 130, 140 pages? Something close to 140? That's not that much in the grand scheme of things. And we have played it like 60 times, and every time has had something totally new brought to it. And admittedly, once you do it for a long time, you start adding homebrew stuff, you start adding stuff that caters way more specifically to your players, but that's a good thing. That's not bad. Yeah. And that just shows you how versatile all of those module settings are, that you can add so much other stuff in.
Yeah, so endless replay value, really. Endless.
Which is what would earn it a 10.
Yeah.
Fun. How fun is this game?
So fun is subjective.
Very. I have a ton of fun with this game.
9 out of 10 is what I wrote it.
I think that's fair.
I think the most fun game... You know, I don't know how I would define the most fun game.
I think
fun is a feeling.
It's subjective, yeah.
Yeah.
But, okay, what holds it back for you, I guess, from having a 10 here?
Well, I think the only thing that really stops it is... It doesn't have built-in rewards for good role-playing and good exploration.
The only thing that it really has that comes close to that is inspiration, and that's not the strongest reward you could have.
You know, a game we'll talk about later, The Burning Wheel, has this really solid mechanic for social combat, basically.
Social interaction,
This argument-style fighting thing, where it's not like mind control that if you lose you're
bent to their will.
You're bent to their will, but it is a mechanized point systems for arguments in RP. And I feel like if D&D had something like that, and some sort of pre-built, and it may have this somewhere, and I might be talking out of my ass a little bit here, random dungeon generator.
Yeah. Those are on the internet,
yes.
But they're not official.
No. A way to, just with the players, just with the DM guide, roll up a random dungeon.
Yeah.
Almost a procedurally generated thing.
Yeah.
I think adding more avenues to have fun if you are a roleplay or exploration-heavy party without the DM, making some changes, that would be really good.
Yeah. And I don't think it needs to be a whole totally mechanized thing either. But just the idea of having some sort of, I mean, inspiration is great, but you can only have it once.
Yeah.
At a time. There can be a stacking reward system, if you continually show that your character does this, you can have something different than just getting inspiration over and over.
Yeah, and another good thing, not to jump on Burning Wheel, I love that game so much, as much as I do. But they let you stack things like that. They have a very similar mechanic to Inspiration, where you get rewarded for good roleplay, or the best roleplay, or specifically doing something in character that hurts yourself.
Yeah.
That
has a negative impact on you. And there are all of the time you hear stories about players that are it's just what my character would do. This is the actual way that should work.
Yes. Where you do something, not chaotic stupid.
No.
But a good example is getting into a fight, or that you or trying to talk your way out of a fight and letting yourself open to several things. I'm trying to think of a specific example if I have any. Of just something that lends itself to letting these abilities stack, letting these points stack.
I mean, I think if we want to just talk about examples of something that is in that way that is totally man, I fucked myself over in character doing this, and it put me in a terrible situation.
I'm sorry.
It's what I would do.
It's early in the morning. What I just said was entirely incoherent.
Yes.
Thank you for playing that up, because the last sentence I said was entirely incoherent.
Yeah, no. Basically, the idea of, this is a terrible idea, and I know that out of character, but in character, it's the only thing that makes sense for me to do here.
Yeah, a great example of this, we talked about this game before, is the character who fell in love with Strahd.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on this channel.
And
obviously out of character, anyone who's ever knows anything about Curse of Strahd knows that Strahd is the villain. Spoiler alert.
But this girl had not left the house that she was a servant in for her entire life.
Yeah. And he was the first person who was genuinely, nice to her in that way. And she was like, oh, woo.
We don't mention this. We haven't actually mentioned this part before. I forgot that she willingly lets him turn her into a vampire.
Yes.
And that she turns other people in and tells them to beg, to swear loyalty to Strahd.
Yeah. And man, what a terrible idea, and as a DM, I was losing my mind, I was cringing into my spine at the character doing that, but it was so fun, and it was so narratively tasty. I was eating it internally.
Something more, just something better there than
Inspiration.
Inspiration,
something better than add advantage to a dice roll.
Yeah, and something that stacks more. Because, I've heard an argument about Inspiration before. That it is so vaguely defined that if your party is, for example, Critical Role, I'll use that as an example. A Critical Role party, or even a party that comes close to that, should never not have Inspiration.
Yeah.
They should, virtually anytime they have any conversation, they should be getting Inspiration.
Yeah, so there needs to be something more defined than that.
Yes, I've heard the argument before, and I've made the argument before, that Inspiration is relative to your table, relative to the player.
Yes.
Where, if you are an exceptionally good role-playing group, if you're an improv troupe or something, if you are theater people that done things together, that's going to be a different standard than if you're a bunch of high school strangers who just recently met.
Yeah. But still,
it needs more of a mechanical reward, more of a benefit.
Yeah. I can think of so many good times where someone in either of the games, either something you've DM'd, something I've DM'd, there are so many times where I'm like, man, Inspiration just is not enough to give you right now
Yeah.
when I'm DMing, and I feel like you've probably had some similar experiences. And I feel like that's the one thing that would like really improve that.
A great
We
example.
talked about this for a while, huh?
Yeah, a great example. Real quick before we move on.
Yes.
Mild. I'm gonna talk around something that happens in one of our actual plays.
Yeah.
But there's something that one of the characters does in the Curse of Strahd actual play we're doing right now that is such a big deal for her character, such this tremendous deal, to make an appeal to a very powerful figure in her life that she does not like talking to help someone else. And the fact that the only thing that she could get for that was inspiration kind of felt...
It felt flat. It felt like it wasn't enough. Yeah, no. It was an incredible moment. It changed so much, not just for that character, but for everything. And all I could give her was, like, advantage on her roll.
Yeah.
And I may work on something myself at this point, because this just does not feel... Sometimes I don't feel like I'm giving you enough.
On this video, it feels like we are talking about adapting Burning Wheel's Artha system into D&D.
Anyway, we talked about that mechanic for entirely too long for a video
the point
like
is,
this.
9 out of 10 fun, despite my criticism.
Yeah. So, the last category before we talk about the overall score is quality.
Yes.
What does this one get there?
So,
and what's your metric?
The best game would be a flawless book printed with no typos, and you would be surprised how many books are published with typos.
Oh, I would not be surprised. Every time I read something, I find a typo, and I'm like, how did your editors let this happen? You have spell check. How did you do this?
That is perfectly balanced and play-tested. Now, D&D, their books don't have typos, typically.
Yeah.
They have few and far between here or there. They're not, I'm not going to say flawless track record, but
nothing major.
A book like Fatal that has multiple words misspelled multiple different ways.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
It's hard to spell correctly when you're writing a game using only one hand.
It took me about half a second to realize what you were talking about, and then it was really fun.
So basically, the thing is, D&D has some balance issues. Yeah. They release some book content, and they absolutely release some Unearthed Arcana content that is horribly unbalanced.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because Unearthed Arcana is meant to be playtested. But there is some stuff that I'm like, man,
you could have thought this through.
How did this get out there? It is either way too strong or significantly too weak.
Which one are you? What are you thinking of? What off the top of your head?
Phoenix Soul.
Yeah.
Is that the one? Or is it Pyromancer?
Pyromancer is the one that sucked, I think.
Pyromancer, Sorcerer. Pyromancer, Sorcerer.
Yeah. I think it was super bad.
Horrible.
If you want to have a sorcerer that focuses on fire magic, don't do that one.
There's actually,
At that point, just play a normal sorcerer and give them all the fire spells.
Not to promote a random homebrew, I'll try to find a link for it. We'll try to put a link for it in the comments.
It's busted. The one that we use all the time. It's a little bit like
it's a little busted. Because it doesn't let you die properly.
Well, okay, it does let you die, but it's way harder. I think it gives you too many abilities at too many times. But like, it's way, way, way better for that kind of vibe than anything else I've ever seen.
Yes.
I have adapted some things from it when we've done it. I'll put the link to that in the description.
Yeah, it's called the Phoenix Mancer. But no, Pyromancer is way too bad. There is still an ability that is in the book, written as normal, that is way too weak, which is Healing Hands from the Asimar ability.
I agree. We talk about that one all the time. It's like you get like a number of hit points equal to your level, and it costs an action, and that's the only time you can use it all day.
Yeah, and you can't ration it like the...
like Lay on Hands or something like that. Yeah, so we usually write it as 3 times your level, and you can split it if needed.
You can, I think we said bursts of 5?
Yeah, bursts of 5 or whatever is left over after that, yeah.
And it's a bonus action.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's, like, unmanageable.
Yes.
Like, if you think, like, I know a lot of people complain about, like, the Dragonborn Breath weapon being too weak. They changed that in D&D, or in 1D&D, and people still don't like it, even though it's, I think, better on, like, all levels except the levels where it's the same.
And they've printed some things that are just downright crippling. Sunlight sensitivity.
Yeah.
For a bunch of...
Which they've revoked.
Yes, they have.
Right? Yeah. But if you're playing a character that's on the surface and they have sunlight sensitivity, 95% of the time they're gonna be at disadvantage when they're attacking.
Yes, which is brutally punishing.
Yeah. As written, that doesn't make any sense.
And yeah, just, like... they have released some unbalanced stuff. The other one that I think that comes to mind a lot is I forget if it's a monk that was fixed later. It was an Arcana. I think it's Way of Tranquility, but I think that's the.
Is that the one that's
final.
like crazy healing or something?
No.
What is it? Which one are you thinking of?
It is the one. It does have some healing, I believe, to it. But its whole thing is, it has a high level ability that absolutely fails if anyone in your party attacks the enemy.
Oh.
At all.
Well, that seems not helpful. Yeah.
The idea is you have to be pacifist, and you have to also not let anyone in your party fight them.
Yeah. Which is a little harder than just being a pacifist.
They've had some
lot harder.
bad ideas, especially in UA, but some of the stuff that gets published worries me.
It's surprising, yeah, that there wasn't more pushback there.
And maybe we're just playing bad or wrong.
Or maybe we play too much and we think about it more than most people.
One thing that I know most people agree with that I will fight tooth and nail on: Warlocks don't have enough spell slots.
They don't. I agree with you.
I get the design space. Warlocks, if you want...
If you gave them like one or two more, they'd be fine.
If you want to play a Warlock and you don't want to take Eldritch Blast,
don't play Warlock.
Yeah, there's
nothing. Unless you're like super focused on like Hexblade, Pact of the Blade. That's the only build that I can genuinely see working if you don't want to take Eldritch Blast.
Warlock blocks you into a corner with how you can do things. Because you have to take Eldritch Blast.
Yeah.
Or you're fucked.
Yeah. And that's not, that's one of those things where there's no variety to it. And, like, the other subclasses for Warlock are really cool, but I rarely, if ever, touch anything other than Hexblade when I'm making a Warlock, because it's the only thing that, like, Hexblade, Pact of the Blade gives you something else to do, and then it basically makes you a martial.
I'll also die on this hill. Warlock and Artificer should have variants that make them full casters. Subclasses that make them full casters.
I agree with you. I agree with you. We have a homebrew Artificer thing that makes them a full caster.
We have a homebrew Warlock thing, too.
Yeah. But like a subclass specifically.
But yeah, so that's quality. 8 out of 10. It needs more playtest balance. I appreciate that they use UA to test a lot of that, but a lot of stuff that gets through it and kind of goes unquestioned. Oh god, I forgot to mention the Ranger.
Yeah. Ranger,
as written, is one of the weakest classes in role-playing games.
And like by a lot, right?
Yes.
The revised one helps a lot,
Revised
but
is good.
That's not what's in the player's handbook.
Yes. Beastmaster Ranger might be one of the weakest characters to exist as written.
Yeah. Sometimes you gotta improve on some stuff.
Yeah. A Gloomstalker Revised Ranger is really good. It's probably one of my favorite archetypes to play.
But the opposite of that also exists.
Yes. And it went to print in their official book like that.
Yeah. And just no one stopped them. Or no one stopped them well enough.
Favored terrain is one of the worst things ever, is one of the most egregious things ever written. Because it is something that if the DM doesn't want you to deal with it, they can just never put you in that terrain.
Yeah. And basically nullify an entire ability in one go.
Yeah, and
an integral ability.
Yeah, and it's not even that useful.
Yeah.
If you're always
but if you have a level 1 ability,
and
you can't use it at all for anything except in one specific area, that's bad.
Yeah. Ranger Revised is genuinely really awesome, and I love it.
Yeah, and that's always what we use when we make.
Yes, but yeah, 8 out of 10.
Okay, so where does that leave us? What's the total here?
Unless I am bad at math, 85 out of 100.
85. 85 is not a bad score.
That is
despite the amount of complaints we've had in the latter half of this video. That is not a bad score.
It's a B+. It's
a B+.
Its strongest points were the 10 out of 10s, the popularity and replay value.
Yep.
While its weakest was cost of entry at 7.
Which is really good.
Yeah.
A 7 being your weak point is really good.
Yeah. But remember, cost of entry you can't really get around because there are no PDFs you can get free of any of these
Nowhere.
books.
There's not like wiki sites that you can just find all this stuff on.
5e Tools doesn't exist.
Yeah, and don't quote us on that because maybe it does and we just don't know about it. But it's whatever.
It's an 85 out of 100. Normally, it's an 80 out of 100 if you're using 5e Tools.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what a B plus.
Yeah, I think that's a B. When I was in school, I think anything below an 85 was a C, but I don't I also know that I was in honors classes and their grading system was stupid. I would say we're going to do a scoreboard check, which is the thing we're going to do that compares it to all the other ones we've done, but in the next video we can do that, because in this video we haven't done any of the other ones yet.
In first place with 85 points is Dungeons & Dragons. In last place with 85 points is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
No way. How'd that happen? It's almost like we've only done one of these so far on our channel.
Alright, so this video, we're going to get out of here.
Alright, we've kept you guys entirely too long. That was fun. That was super cool. I hope you guys are thoroughly entertained by how many criticisms we have of the game that we play all the time, like literally every day. This has been College of Lore RPG Review. I will see you guys on the next video.
Thank you for watching this video from College of Lore. Remember to like this video, subscribe to join the party, and have a fantastic adventure.